Roll call, please.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Here.
Alderman Jacob?
Here.
Alderman Woods?
Here.
Alderman Sismarski?
Here.
Alderman Roy Wesley? Alderman Eugene Wesley?
Here.
Alderman Catalano?
Here.
Alderman Messina?
Here.
We have a quorum. Next, approval of minutes for February 13, 2020 for the Planning, Zoning, and
Second.
Building. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Mayor?
Just a couple of quick announcements. Today from the DuPage County Health Department, recommendations to cancel large-scale community events or gatherings with more than 250 participants. This was based on an increasing number of confirmed cases and novel coronavirus in the region. Just so, it's just a heads up. And also, the volunteer dinner will be postponed at this time. And then we'll be sending notices out tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, next, report and recommendation, concept plan approval, special use plan, unit development, and major site plan review, case number CDC 2020-01. Mr. Cage, you're going to take that?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Exciting times. This is a project I know that we've discussed in the past. And I think what I like about the discussion we're going to have this evening is I know that we've talked in the past about various other developments, mainly in the industrial park, which I really enjoy, some developments on Irving Park, which I know the council and the residents enjoy, single-family homes, but this is our first kind of major residential project in some time. So I know this was anticipated back when we did, in 2013, we did the vision plan, when we looked at some various things for kind of this area around City Hall and to the south. So just wanted to bring that up because this is something that I know that the city has been looking at, studied, planning for some time. So with that, moving on to so it's a concept plan. We have, anytime you have a PUD, there's a few different ways you can go about it. There's a concept plan, there's a preliminary and a final. The concept plan essentially is what we're discussing this evening. It's a PUD, so typically what will happen if this moves forward, the applicant will come back with their preliminary and final engineering to a future meeting. Moving right along, there we go. So I think we're all very familiar with the site. Obviously, this is City Hall, where we are right now, just to the south. I think the key thing to cover is that I think it's covered on my next slide, obviously. Wooddale Road, Irving Park, this is the area that the city owns, which was covered. This was the area that the city studied, obviously with the intersection, the clock tower, with the vision plan, obviously the Park District's beach facility over here, White Cottage here. So I think the key thing for me is it's kind of an odd-shaped parcel, and that's just the nature of the beast. I believe it is, I believe it's 4.3 acres. I think that's on an upcoming slide. Just to give you an idea of some basics on zoning, TCB, one of our favorite zoning districts. Obviously, we'll be talking about that soon with the UDO update. Obviously, you can see, obviously this property has access along Wooddale Road and commercial to the south. As you all remember, we did our comprehensive land use plan adopted in August 2018. Shows it as a mixture of retail commercial. The good news is retail commercial is also a category that can be used for residential. Obviously, this is the beach facility. Obviously, this is City Hall. Moving right along, the address is 372. The applicant has built that into the name of the proposed development, 372 Parkview Station. 4.3 acres. Obviously, this is the former SBT Bank. Obviously, a substantial parking lot and drive-through facility. Access, as you can see, right up here, adjacent to City Hall. And then the only other thing that would be of note, obviously, there's a significant wooded area to the rear of the property. I know that the council and staff has discussed this previously a number of years ago. So that's obviously an existing buffer between what was formerly the bank and the beach water park facility to the west. So this is the proposed site plan that the applicants who are here this evening, the plan is that they will, if it's okay with the chairman and the committee, give a presentation on some of kind of like the information that they have project specific, whereas staff typically focuses on the code, the layout, and some of the other items. Obviously, they know the models, they know the units better than staff does, so don't worry, we will get to that later. So, as you can see, the plan has four buildings, that should be three-story buildings and one four-story. Three-story buildings are here and here. My eyesight isn't too good. I believe that's the four-story, three-story back here. Parking spaces, 214, obviously, in and around the units. I think kind of a key point here from a planning standpoint, obviously the driveway location has been shifted further away from City Hall. That's a good thing. Obviously, the closer driveways are together, the more conflicts you have. I know there's a traffic engineer in the audience today who can speak more eloquently on that than I can. Obviously, that's a connection to Wooddale Road, and obviously the secondary exit is off Commercial to the south here. One area that I know is of particular interest, there's dumpster facilities, dumpster enclosures, 3 within the site plan, and I believe some of them are in this location right here, and bicycle parking. Obviously, it's considered somewhat of a transit-orientated development. Obviously, it's in close proximity with Wooddale Station, metro station that is, and bicycle parking as well. Key thing I should have mentioned is the number of units, 142 units spread out over 4 buildings. And the other thing that I did forget to mention, which is highlighted here, the applicant is proposing permeable pavers within the development. I know there is an engineer here this evening who knows significantly more than that than I do. I believe it's here and this area as well. And then jumping right ahead, this is difficult for me to see, so I know it would be challenging. When the applicant is allowed to do their presentation, I have hard copies that I'll pass out, and I think that will help us kind of focus on the different makeup of the units, because that's quite hard to see on that screen. Moving right along, elevations. So this is a key component, obviously. I know we had some kind of preliminary discussions. There were some very strong opinions on materials. What we have essentially is masonry. Portion of the building is along the base, the first floor, and then in the center of the building and at the east and west or ends of the building. The remainder of the construction material is ephes. Obviously you can see a large number of windows. We have some people in the audience and on the council who are well versed in this product and in this industry. Obviously we have balconies. I think what this demonstrates, certainly in my opinion, is, I know we talked about the elevations, we talked about it being an important thing. And I think what we have here is certainly headed in the direction that staff was hearing at those meetings. And let's see if we can move along. And actually, some of these perspectives actually tell the story better than I can, which is obviously, and again, I can't read the small text, I apologize, but different perspectives within the proposed development. Obviously, this is that building with the dumpster enclosure, heading towards commercial, obviously a grilling area. Some of these areas in between the buildings are permeable pavers, and I've got a few of these other elevations that I'll just kind of go through just to kind of give you a feel for what we're looking at. Obviously, this is the 3-story building. I think from From a massing standpoint, it makes sense. It's not overpowering, which is important. I know we have some larger structures and larger facilities on Irving Park Road, but this, as the vision plan called out, this certainly is it's a different location, has a different feel. I believe there's a question.
Mayor?
Sorry, Ed, but as you went through the masonry, then you went to ephes. I'm not sure what that is.
It's, I know we have someone who's, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, who's well-versed in this, but it is a more refined version of stucco that weathers a lot better. Stucco, if you're familiar with certainly our climate, if you have a stucco building, it doesn't weather well. I know Alderman Woods probably knows a lot more about it than I do. It doesn't weather well. ephes is one of those products that's supposed to imitate it, but has less maintenance.
Okay.
I had a couple quick questions on the ephes as well. I heard that usually ephes has a lot of problems with like moisture. If it gets underneath, they could have problems with that. Maybe we could find out a little bit more about that. And I thought that's normally for warmer climates is usually where they use ephes. Is that correct or no?
I mean, that's an excellent point. That's something, obviously, I can do some more homework on my own side. I know probably the architect will be able to answer some of those questions this evening. Just in other communities I've worked in, it is used within the Midwest. So I know stucco is typically more, found more in, warmer climates. And I think ephes was a result of that stucco. I know in some of the historical structures, certainly in the community I live in the West, they have some stucco buildings and they don't weather well. I think that's why ephes was developed. I know someone can expound on that a lot better than I can, but certainly between now and the future city council meeting, I can certainly look into that information and distribute it.
Okay. Alderman Sizmarsky?
Yeah, I know that you're calling it ephes, but there's also a word called drive it. Is it similar?
Same thing, isn't it?
This is the same
Yes.
thing, I believe.
Yes.
And we just used that on Front Street, I believe, in the facade project on Aces and they have drive it all over that. Quite a few buildings in town do.
That is correct. That was a little bit before my time, but I believe it is. And then there's another development underway, I'm not going to mention the name, that will include some of the same material as well.
Right.
So that's an excellent point, Alderman Sizmarsky. We do have it in town. The examples that I'm aware of are relatively new. Certainly, I don't see any problems with them. Obviously, that's a maintenance issue. I'm going to go on a limb and suggest that the applicant's not going to construct something that won't last. Obviously, this is a project that's going to last a considerable amount of time. And if it's a maintenance issue on their end, and it doesn't appear the way that it should, that's going to be it's a cost that I'm sure the applicant won't want. So it's going to have to be inspected as it's installed. It's going to have to be the correct material. Workmanship for installation is important, but these are all good points. I mean, these are all parts of the project that are key parts to it.
Alderman Catalano?
The building facing Wooddale Road, there going to be any storefronts there? I remember when we first saw the first designs.
Mr. Cage?
So, yeah, to answer your question, this is a purely residential project, 142 residential units.
Alderman Sizmarsky?
That was the other proposal on commercial in the corner.
Yeah.
They had the residential on, or retail first floor, one floor. That
Correct.
was totally something different.
Mr. Murmas?
Yeah, correct. That was probably eliminated over a year ago. We had mentioned that a few times. That was more of a phase two. The commercial component was always on the opposite side of Wooddale Road. So it's two different things.
Mr. Wesley?
No, I was going to save my questions after they do the
Okay.
presentation. I have three of them, so I will do it first.
Okay. Mr. Cage, you want to continue?
Okay. And then moving along, obviously, more of the elevations, more renderings. And I believe, obviously, you know, we've got some elevations of the 4-story. I think the important thing from my standpoint is it's a whole development. All the buildings are tied together in terms of the style, in terms of the materials, et cetera, so it will look like an overall planned unit development, which is exactly what it is. And then just kind of moving through. Obviously, I mentioned this before on the land use plan, designated as retail commercial, which also accommodates multifamily residential. It's consistent with that commercial land use category. And really, I think the key thing is that this plan meets some of the goals of the comprehensive plan that we adopted in 2018, and then also kind of echoes that, the planning process before that, which was the vision plan, which was back in 2013. And I know this is kind of stretching my memory back to 2015. CMAP did a presentation. They did Homes for a Changing Region with 4 communities around us. And some of their recommendations were housing developments near Wooddale Metro Station, obviously transit-orientated development. And then another thing that they did mention as a recommendation, that housing that can accommodate not only seniors but also younger households. So that study is certainly not lost on us. This request meets a couple of those recommendations. So we had the vision plan in 2013, we had the CMAP plan in 2015, and then we had the comprehensive plan in 2018. And from the good news from a planning standpoint, this plan hits, you know, some of the key aspects of all those studies. So I guess what I'm saying is, you know, we spend a lot of time and a lot of effort reviewing studies. They're there for a reason. And then when we have someone who comes in with a plan that meets the intent of those studies, that really, I appreciate that, because then it tells us we're doing the right thing. And we have people who see or have the same vision that we do as a city moving forward. So kind of the nuts and bolts of things. So it's come in as a PUD, planned unit development, and there are a number of deviations. Now, this is consistent. I kind of would go back to some of our other recent projects, the former Washington Street project. Obviously, these are in the industrial business park, the Bryn Mawr development. I would say, certainly in the 5 years I've been here, every planned unit development has come in with some deviations, which I know that kind of links to the UDO and some of the updates that we're looking to do. So just running through these very briefly. The front build-to line, 25 feet. Side yard setback of 20 feet. Dwelling units per building, 18 max. Obviously, this, you know, what we're talking about is a bigger and, in my opinion, better multifamily PUD development. Parking spaces, and I can kind of, I'll come back to that in just a minute. The requirement is 2 spaces per unit, and then I'll just go through the list, and I'll come, parking I think is a key component that I will come back to. Some of the parking is placed in a side yard. Some of our development requirements are not that flexible. Obviously, this is a site plan that needs some relief, because maybe when some of the zoning districts were established, they didn't contemplate a development such as this. And then street-facing main entrances are required. Some of these buildings do not face the street. And then street-facing services entries prohibited. So what we do have, and I think, you know, if I just jump back real quick before I get to parking, I think on the site plan, what we're really seeing is, you know, you have the southerly 2 buildings obviously face Wooddale Road. The northerly 2 buildings do not. And that's some of the relief items, essentially because these buildings are orientated west to east rather than north to south. So going back to parking briefly, and I won't talk for too much longer, I promise. So our ordinance requires 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. Number of units are 142. 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit obviously would take that to 284. Obviously, the applicant is proposing 214. Now, what's important about this, a couple of different things. We have a one-size-fits-all parking requirement. So there are a number of studio units, there are a number of one-bedroom units, they require 2 parking spaces, as does the 2-bedroom units. Now, I know there's a gentleman here who will delve into this in more detail, but I think it's fairly common sense to know that, you know, you don't need 2 parking spaces for studios. So what some of our other neighboring communities have done, and ones I can think of off the top of my head, just because I worked in one, was Park Ridge, and Roselle and Bensonville. For the smaller units, the studio and the 1-bedroom, they do require a lower parking requirement. So overall, the PUD is parked at a ratio of 1.5, which, looking at some of our neighboring communities, is fairly consistent. And I think if you look at some of the communities that do have more condos, apartments, multifamily, and I'm thinking of Park Ridge, I'm thinking of Elmhurst, some of those communities have had to add additional parking because they've been so successful in terms of moving people downtown. The people who move downtown obviously use the bars and the restaurants and the facilities. So I think that's one of the things from a planning standpoint. You know, if you want to generate kind of a district, you want to have people live there as well, but there's got to be some give and take on the
have a-
parking.
Just a couple quick questions here. Alderman Sizmarsky?
Yeah, is that why this site plan change? I could have swore, if, maybe I missed a meeting or two, but I could have swore it was a 2-4 and 2-3 building. Is that probably why the parking became an issue?
Mr. Cage?
Yes, that's an excellent point. I know this plan has changed a number of times. Obviously, it changed there was another component across the street with some commercial. This site has changed, and you're exactly right. I know some of the buildings had changed in height, and that obviously, good point, excellent point, has affected the parking.
Alderman Messina?
I have multiple questions, but I'll save some for the end. But the key question I have on parking, what's the actual mix of unit sizes? You have studio, you have 1-bedroom, you have 2-bedroom, but we don't know how many of each. And to me, that's critical in order to make such a decision.
Mr. Cage?
I'm going to defer
You'll have
that.
that? Okay.
I'm going to defer that to the applicant, if that's okay. And just kind of finish up my presentation. CMAP, we talked about that one, the deviations. And then these are just calling out some issues, other project considerations. I know that the council is very familiar with the masonry code, which requires 85% masonry. This application does not meet that. That's a very high requirement. That's one of the things that's actually in the building code. It's something that we may want to take a look at in the future. Parking, obviously, we just talked about deviation from 2 spaces to 1.5 spaces. Obviously, the property line along by the PD, the city is actually planning a future TIF project just to address security and lighting issues. And then the last one, stormwater. I don't want to get too far into this because I know there's an engineer in the audience with the applicant who can talk about that certainly in more detail, but I think the key there is that there is a significant use of permeable pavers in the parking lot. So just to summarize, the current submittal, what you're looking at is a concept plan review. Full compliance with the UDO, building codes, fire codes, stormwater ordinance will be reviewed and presented during the preliminary and final. I think you can tell from some of the things we've discussed, there's going to be some relief items that come through that. But all of these items will be discussed again when it comes back for the kind of the preliminary stroke final submittal, and will have to be either addressed or documented in any kind of approval documents. So the CDC had a public hearing on February the 24th. They recommended approval because it was consistent with the surrounding zoning and land use classifications and consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. And as I just said, the preliminary and final plans will come back for a final review at both the CDC and City Council. And that's the end of my portion. And then, you're welcome. And then I know the applicant's got a presentation to fill in some of the blanks that I didn't get into in too much detail.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, Alderman, on behalf of the entire Intercontinental Real Estate and Development team and our development partners, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present our new development that we call 372 Parkview Station. We appreciate all the effort from city staff, our neighbors, and community leaders to get to this point. It has been a pleasure doing business in Wooddale so far, and we look forward to many years ahead. Tonight, I have with us members from our team with WT Group and KLOA. We will be making a joint presentation, but before I pass off the presentation to Chris Stark with WT, I want to provide a brief reminder of the history of our firm, the businesses that we run, a showcase of some of our development accomplishments, and discuss one of the key reasons this project is a win for everyone. So as you can see, we are over a 50-year-old company. And we are in the water business. We supply water piping. We're in the financial services businesses, Republic Bank. Right in here, this is more of a family entertainment. We founded ICI, which is a Greek REIT. And then over here is a philanthropic entity. We own a golf course, and we run events benefiting veterans. And then last here is Intercontinental Equities, and that's another development firm. You can see here our global reach. And then here, some of our family of companies just portrayed. In terms of developments, just want to kind of highlight. Fordham Tower is a 50-story luxury high-rise condominium. Here is Lighthouse Point, a luxury multifamily condo development on Lake Michigan. Here is Olympia Fields. This is a public-private partnership, so we're no stranger to that. We provided, right down here, 50-unit metro parking lot. And then this is, a lot of people know this, this is World Music Center down at Tinley Park. It's a true economic engine and driver to that region and that area. And that leads me to my last point before I turn this over, and that's the financial impact of this development. We've done our own numbers based on CoStar demographic report from year-end 2019, average income of about 60 or 76,000 in a 5-mile radius. If we use 142 units, average anticipated occupant of 1.25, you come up with about $95,000 of average household income. Once fully stabilized, there'll be roughly around $13 million of spending capacity. We anticipate locally that residents of this project will spend about 12% of their revenue locally. That roughly comes out to about $1.6 million. Sales tax revenue is 8.5 for about just under $140,000. And then new business spending to business owners, about just under $1.5 million. So with that, what I wanted to do is turn this over to Chris Stark with WT to talk about our site plan.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to present our project. My name is Chris Stark, and I'm with WT Group. We've been involved in this project for approximately a year, and we were hired by Intercontinental to perform architectural, structural, and civil services and surveying services. The site plan that was generated consists of the 4 buildings, as you know, one 4-story building and 3 3-story buildings. Most of the area is parking, and part of that parking is the permeable pavers. The permeable pavers are there consistently in that one area in the center to which what I would call the courtyard area. A lot of the water will wind up coming through this area, and there's also a water storage area underneath this area here in the center here, right here, that my co-art here, Todd, can explain a little more too. The access is definitely off of Wooddale Road. It's comprised of a 26-foot wide drive, complete with crosswalks, with complete circular access to all of the doors and the trash enclosures, coming all the way around here. We added some more permeable pavers to the parking spaces to better serve the drainage area and to control our stormwaters that much more. One change that we did that we talked about is to centralize this trash enclosure right here in between the 2 buildings. Before, it was over here behind the maintenance garage. That kind of gave a little, that overall walk here to this was significantly longer than we had liked, so we just kind of centralized this trash enclosure right here to this area. Coming around here, of course, there's the access drive all the way down to Commercial Street, and with additional permeable pavers right here as well. Part of the development here, we also offer a maintenance garage for the grounds.
We have a couple quick questions.
Yes, sir.
Alderman, Mr.
I
Wesley?
just have a couple of questions why it came, the paver bricks that you put down,
Yes.
they got little tiny holes in them that the water goes through?
Not these bricks, and right now, we're looking at this, it's a solid brick, but
Okay.
all of the in-between, there's like what I'll call it like a grout type of spacing in
What-
between there with the gravel and the fines that are in between these bricks.
Okay, I have a couple of questions on it.
Okay, continue.
So, if I make
So
mistaken,
it'll be a solid surface.
we have one industrial building that has that in play already. Okay, you'll have to plow that with not a metal blade, you have to plow it with a rubber blade. That's what they do up there. The concerns I have on this, and I'll be totally honest with you here, the maintenance of that thing. Okay, because if those holes get plugged up with the salt in that, that's not going to drain unless, there's got to be is there a way that we could put it in our code, and I don't know if we could, to have them prove the maintenance of that is functioning all the time, that's not plugged up? I know it ain't in our code now, but that is my concern. If that thing gets plugged up, all those holes or whatever, with salt and debris, there's no way that's going to drain. I don't think so. I'm not an engineer, but that's what I want.
I can answer your some of your questions. Good evening. My name's Todd Abrams. I'm the civil engineer on the project. Permeable pavers have come a long way, over the last year since they've kind of been introduced to the area. They became real popular in the mid or early 2000s. But yes, you're correct. Maintenance is always a concern with permeable pavers. We're working with a couple different permeable paver manufacturers. Right now, we're working with Reading Rock to make sure we're choosing a permeable paver that's, not only requires less maintenance, but also is durable enough for snow plowing and also trash delivery. So we're choosing the strongest, most durable block. But in addition to that, the DuPage County Stormwater Ordinance actually requires a maintenance agreement between the city and the developer, and part of that maintenance agreement will include monthly and yearly inspections and maintenance that'll become required, or it will become part of part of the development agreement. So, yeah, that's something that will be provided, a maintenance plan for the permeable pavers.
I mean, that was my whole goal, that we have a maintenance agreement with you guys going forward. Because I know they're nice to have, but we only got one building, and that's in our industrial park that has them right now. So that's my concern, that, but you addressed them already. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Wesley, was that it? I think you said you had a couple questions.
Well, that was only for that part. I'll wait till the...
Oh, okay. Could we continue? Yeah, let's continue.
So, and of course, it was previously mentioned that there was quite a bit of trees throughout the existing site, and we've done our best here, and this is a very general type of landscape design. And we've had our landscape architect also look at the tree distribution, the tree placement. We also looked very closely at the tree species, so it comes in line with the growth rate and easily manageable. So that's about it for the site plan for my presentation. I'd like to turn it over to
One quick question I have on the site plan. The one drive on the south, and yeah, that one right there, how wide is that?
That's
Two?
also 26 feet.
It is 26
Yeah,
feet, okay.
We designed it at 26 feet based on a comment from staff saying that they needed the 26 feet to adequately guide the fire truck, to meet the fire truck clearances.
And on the east side of that, it looks like those are those parking spaces?
That's the Park District parking spaces.
No, that one right there.
This
Yeah.
right here?
Yeah.
Yes, those are parking spaces.
Those are parking, and they're still 26 feet?
There is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mayor?
I got a couple of questions. One, the garbage enclosure is now gonna be right there.
Right.
Is that like a brick garbage enclosure?
It is a brick.
Okay, because we've been working on garbage enclosures. We don't want to be driving north and see some dilapidated fence or something.
Yeah, these will be brick enclosures with walkthroughs on the back, so nobody has to open the doors.
Okay, and maybe, are you the one that's going to tell me what EFS is made out of? Is it
No, I'm not.
concrete or plaster?
My architect on staff will, that's Chris Kalashek.
One of the things, if I may point out, is also we've lined the south.
Yeah, could you go to the microphone, please?
Chris Kalashevsky, good Irish name, from WT Group, a licensed architect. One of the things I want to point out that Chris was getting into is that not only is this masonry enclosed, but we previously you saw a plan. Thank you. You saw a plan that had some trees in this area and some different style of deciduous trees in there. One of the things is that we have a storage unit under here that Todd will dwell into in a little bit. So we also modified the trees here so that we would put some more coniferous trees along that southern edge to provide a year-round visual barrier and, quite frankly, to screen the trash enclosure from any northbound traffic.
Okay, was there any other further questions?
The driver's questions?
Did you want
Yeah,
I'll
that's
bring
coming
that
up.
up when I make my presentation.
to, okay.
All right, I'd like to turn this back over to Todd Abrams.
We have one more question here.
The buildings on the other end, they're going to have to walk with their trash to that one enclosure?
No, sir, there's a trash enclosure right here.
Okay, so both ends have.
Yeah, so
All right, great.
the walks are right here.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we could continue.
Okay.
Thank you. Again, Todd Abrams, WT Group, civil engineer that worked on the project. I'll just speak briefly about some of the stormwater design associated with the project. Goal of the stormwater design on this project was to reduce release rates from the property, and then also to improve stormwater quality from the stormwater discharges from the property. What you're looking at here is just a small snippet of it's an analysis of discharges and property tributary areas to property to the west. As you can see, the existing condition area tributary to the west is about 1.36 acres. In the existing condition, as developed, it's 0.835 acres, so pretty substantial reduction of area tributary to the west. And then our stormwater analysis include what we call a peak discharge analysis. So we looked at discharges to the west. The peak discharge in the existing condition is 3.86 CFS, and the proposed is 3.01 CFS, so pretty substantial reduction. And of course, this reduction is caused by the fact that we're putting in some underground detention to this area, putting in a restrictor to reduce flows from leaving when stormwater discharges to the west. Next slide is just a color slide of kind of what we're doing with the permeable pavers that we've been talking about. You can see all of the permeable pavers being installed on site are highlighted in yellow. There's approximately 37,000 square feet of new permeable pavers that are being installed. And permeable pavers are great. They promote infiltration into the ground. They improve stormwater quality. And then they also help reduce discharge rates from a development. Again, detention system to the west is really twofold. We've got underground storage pipes, 60-inch pipes here. Then we also have a relatively large underground detention system here. Right now, what we're showing is almost an 8-foot deep concrete structure, a storm trap, that holds about 0.75 acre feet of detention. So we also have a small detention system. It's not showing that, but will be constructed here. It's a 36-inch pipe that we'll be installing to restrict flows. Essentially, that's the highlights of the stormwater management system. So with that, if I have no questions.
Mayor?
So all that storage, the underground storage, then just flows south, right? The commercial, and then it's going to go west?
Great question. There's really three systems. Because the site is, the way the existing flows work on site is there's areas that are tributary to the west, there's areas that are tributary directly to Wooddale Road, and there's areas that are tributary to Commercial Street. So since there's so many different drainage divides, what we're doing is we're capturing the storm water from this area, discharging it in this direction where it goes today, and then the remaining portions of the site are being discharged to Commercial Street.
No, just because I was here when they were in front of CDC, that was some of the residents' questions and making sure they don't get flooded or get any excess water that.
Alderman Wesley?
Absolutely.
Is that detention pond underground detention that you got, is that where the restrictor valve is going? In that?
There will be actually three restrictors, one here, then there'll be one up in this location, and then one down in this location.
How big is the restrictor?
That's a great question. I think I'll have to grab my plans for that. It's kind of a complicated system.
I know it is.
But we've got, so the restrictor that will be in this location is a 6-inch hole in the structure. Then the restrictor will have in this location here in the northwest, there'll be two restrictors. There'll be a 3.5-inch restrictor and a 10.8-inch restrictor. And then the restrictor that will be located just southwest of this building here will be a 5.8-inch restrictor. So it's a multiple restrictor design.
And I just wanted to remind the council, today, we're just looking at the concept plan. They are going to have to come back to us with more details once the concept plan is approved. So,
Are you referring we can't ask questions then, or what?
no, I'm just letting you know that we're looking at the concept. They are going to come back with more details. Alderman Woods?
Yeah, and comment to that comment, since they're going to speed this process up, and the next thing coming back is preliminary/final, this is really our only opportunity to make any significant change without throwing a monkey wrench into the works, because I'm assuming based on that comment, they're looking to come back with the final and maybe a tweak here or there, but nothing major. So if we want something, I think today is the day to bring that forward as much as it may pain some people.
Alderman Catalano?
Yeah, as far as the detention area, is there going to be a service exit to actually go in there to see if there's any issues for maintenance or?
Yeah, absolutely. There'll be multiple locations where you'll be able to access the system. And then, well, this system, there'll be multiple ports, but in these other systems, there'll be manholes where you can access the systems.
Thank you.
Alderman Woods?
So, a couple questions. One, the stormwater, what's required by DuPage County? Can you speak to what's required by DuPage County versus what's required by Wooddale? And what percentage of which one of those are you meeting? Because there's a lot of numbers floating around, so.
Sure. Well, with relation to release rates or detention in general?
The overall design, so, you're starting out with X amount of lot coverage, you got a 4.3 acre site, you're covering X amount.
Sure.
What's the requirement and where are you at with that as a percentage of where you should be?
Gotcha. So what the DuPage County Stormwater Ordinance says is you can, since this is an existing site that's relatively developed, the ordinance says that you can add up to 25,000 square feet of new impervious area, parking lots, building, et cetera, without having to meet what I would call the absolute DuPage County Stormwater Ordinance, which is really restricting the stormwater runoff. Detention system you'd have to provide with a brand-new development with raw land. So since the site's relatively developed, you're allowed to, take into effect the fact that the site's mostly pavement now. So the DuPage County Stormwater Ordinance says that you can add up to 25,000 square feet of new impervious area without meeting the raw land development ordinance. So what we're providing is, the Wooddale's ordinance says you can only construct 10,000 square feet of impervious area without triggering the absolute ordinance. What we're proposing is an addition of 20,000 square feet of new impervious area to make the development work.
Okay, and so going back to the chart, the existing versus development that you had, the little yellow chart, and the 1.3 acre feet versus 3.86 versus 3.1. So those numbers are coming from the existing SBC site, parking lots, building, the way it sits.
So, this is actually just an analysis of areas to the west. And actually, if you'd like, I can talk a little bit about the other areas, which are much more substantial reductions. Like, for instance, the area to the south. Thank you. There's a lot of calculations involved. Excuse me. Let's see. So in the existing condition, drainage to the south, the peak discharge rate is 19.91 CFS. As proposed, it's 4.04 CFS. So it's almost it's almost 20% of what the stormwater discharge is today. So when you look at the overall development as a whole, it's a significant reduction.
Okay. I wasn't quite sure if that's how to read that when you were saying that, because you kind of glossed over it pretty quickly, so I just wanted to make sure that I knew and everybody else knew that there was a reduction in the flows over there.
Absolutely.
Next big thing, so with all the variances that we're requesting and all the other stuff, I have to ask why we don't build 3 taller buildings versus 1 bigger building. We wouldn't have to talk about stormwater, we wouldn't have to talk about parking, and some other issues. Could somebody speak to that?
I can just make the overall, answer and say, it is a cost thing. As you go up, you're starting to bring in much more expensive materials. This is a prototype design for us. We know the costs, we know how things are gonna shake out. We did look at, looking at these alternatively, we'd end up losing a substantial amount of units by going to 3 buildings.
If you kept them all
Yeah.
at 4 stories.
If we did all at 4. We're also trying to create a unique atmosphere as well. We just didn't want to throw up, 4 big buildings or even 1 big building. We wanted to make it feel a little bit urban and that.
Could I just
Can I
add
follow up on that?
Yeah.
And then go back to?
Alderman Messina?
Just to follow up on that, because that was one of the questions I was holding. Uniquely, you have 3 3-story buildings and 1 4-story building. I'm no builder, but you require an elevator after 3 stories, is that correct?
We have elevators in each building.
Each one will have one?
Yep.
Okay, great.
One of the things we want to talk about the height too. Technically, by the code, we could go up to 72 feet, 6 stories. We just felt that that was not in the context of the environment. And we really wanted to develop a community feel. The plan is very purposeful in that it's in a U-shaped layout. We could have put 3 buildings just lineal, very harsh, face to face. You're looking out your living room window or sliding door and you're seeing the opposite person doing something you don't want to see. For all these views, the majority of the views, if we go back, just back to the plan. Okay. If you go back to the plan, you will see, and I promise I'll stay here, you'll see that most of the views will have views that go past the units. Very few will look right into the units. So that was very purposeful in laying out the units itself. Creating this U-shape effect gives us kind of a community feel when we get into my part of the presentation after Javier, when he speaks about the traffic. I'll show about how we thought about the progression from the street into the site. And really having 3 buildings, much taller, really just created too much of a wall effect. And so we very much looked at that. So I think, Todd, we were still,
Questions till he comes back. We'll let the traffic guy speak.
I think, Todd, were you all wrapped up? Or?
Yes, I'm complete. I'll pass it on to KLOA if there's no other questions about stormwater.
Any more stormwater questions? If you have a question, ask it. Alderman, okay.
Good evening. My name is Javier Milan. I'm a principal with KLOA Incorporated. We're retained to do the traffic and parking study for the development. So I'm going to concentrate on parking since this is a main issue. As proposed and given its location of the site, within close proximity to the Metro train station, and a mix of land uses surrounding the site. The development fits the characteristics of what we call a transit-oriented development, or TOD. So parking demand requirements at a TOD development are much lower than the parking demand of developments that are not located within close proximity to public transportation. So in order for us to determine whether the proposed number of parking spaces and its per unit ratio compares to other similar developments that are close to transit, we compile a list of various apartment developments near public transit. And I'm going, let's see, where's the arrow in this? Oh, here. Yes. So we compiled this list of different developments up to the residents of Wilmette that are actually close, within a quarter-mile spacing, sometimes a little bit closer, sometimes half a mile, but within walking distance to a transit area. And based on that list, you've seen here the per unit ratio that is being provided. When we looked at that, the average number of parking spaces per unit, it's 1.26 spaces per unit. Now, we also looked at something in town, and that's the residents of Hamilton Lakes. Now, it's a non-TOD development. It's actually doesn't have any public transit close by, but we wanted to look at that. And the actual parking demand of the facility, it's, or the number of parking spaces that there are, the number of units occupied divided by the number of parking spaces, it would come up to 1.58. It says 1.44, but it's 1.58 parking spaces. That is very close to what is being proposed in here as to the 1.51, and this is a facility that is within close proximity to transit. Now, we didn't stop there. We also looked at ITE, and that's the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and see what their surveys have shown of numerous facilities or apartments within close proximity to train stations. And the average is 1.5, which is in line with what the development is providing. We also looked at the census data in here. What's happening here? How does it compare? So census data basically mentioned to us in all the data that, and I've lost my, the number of auto ownership of rental units within a quarter mile of the train station is 1.44. Once again, below what is being proposed, which is the 1.51. So given all those examples that I gave you, and I went through so many of them, ITE, census data, this whole list, even the one that is a non-transit development.
Hold on, we just have one question. Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Are you going to be the one that actually finally answers the question of the mix?
Uh,
These are great percentages that you keep giving.
I
but
will.
It's okay. As
I
long
will.
as you're going to give us the
I will.
breakdown, that'll be great.
I will. So I wanted to give you that. So then the unit mix, because I have additional information in terms of unit mix on what ITE says. So the unit mix is 29 studios, 61 one-bedroom, and 52 two-bedroom. So we also look, once we have that mix, we looked at ITE, and what does ITE say in terms of the mix of bedrooms, and how does it compare to the number of parking spaces? Based on the ITE surveys, the typical peak demand is 0.9 to 1 space per bedroom. In this case, you assume a studio is a one-bedroom is a one-bedroom, then the two-bedroom. When you do the calculation, you end up with a parking demand of 178 parking spaces, well below the 214 spaces that is being provided.
Could you give that mix again, please?
Yes.
29
29 studios.
Oh.
Sorry.
The unit mix is in the back of our presentation.
Okay, thank you.
But I can repeat it again. Altogether, 29 studios, 61 one-bedrooms, and 52 two-bedrooms.
Thank you.
Okay? Any other questions regarding parking?
Alderman Catalano?
Yeah, was there any consideration of doing parking underneath the first floor building, going underneath the building, first floor?
That's beyond, that's civil. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus.
Due to financial considerations, that just wouldn't be possible to do that at this time.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, so in this whole calculations of how many parking spaces, is that just a calculation for the tenants? And what do people?
All inclusive, and I'm sorry, I should have said that, it's all inclusive. For example, IT very explicitly says that Just like trip generation in IT, it's all inclusive, because people tend to think, well, that's only the people that live there. No, it's all inclusive, whether it's a tenant, whether it's a visitor, whether it's I'm making this up, an Amazon van coming in and dropping something, so it's all inclusive. So, and this is normally surveyed at night, because during the day people leave, so you really cannot survey during the day, because you wouldn't be doing justice. You wouldn't know what the actual parking demand is. So typical surveys start around 6 p.m. when people start coming home from work, and they go until typically 2 in the morning. By that time, the visitors have been gone, are gone, and then you have the demand that it's only residents. So you get to see the peak and then going down again to that level at 2 a.m.
So we have, how many, 214 units? Is that-
214 units, correct.
And so-
Oh, I'm sorry, 214 parking spaces, sorry.
Right. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and 145,
Um,
2 units.
yeah.
So each person, I'm just doing this a simple way because I'm not that smart. So 1.5 cars per unit roughly.
Correct.
So 1/4 or 1/2 of the people have a friend come over between that 6 p.m. Where do they park?
Again, it's all inclusive, and if you remember what I mentioned, TOD developments tend to have less parking demand, so there's going to be some people that are going to take advantage of being so close to the train station and to a downtown or an area of mixed uses. The parking goes lower than other developments, so they might take advantage of that and they don't have a car. That's also validated by the census tract that I mentioned to you that actually shows, like I told you, 1.44 vehicles, and also it said that approximately 23% of the households within a 1/4 mile of the Wooddale metro station, they have one or no vehicle at all. That's why that 1.26 that I mentioned to you, that's why the 1.5 works, because there's going to be people that do not have vehicles. Also, and I will have to, if I'm out of line, you tell me, but also the parking will be separated from the rent, so it's separate, so it's not together with the apartment. That's an incentive for somebody to say, you know what, I don't want to pay for parking because I don't have a car, so I come in basically freeing parking spaces that can be used for visitors.
Can you speak to, so what's the offset or discount for the TOD community that you're saying people don't? Is that
Mhm.
20%?
Well, typically,
Offset?
well, as I mentioned, the typical peak parking demand of TODs is about 0.9 to 1 parking space per unit. And that's all inclusive, like just like what you asked. Also, that takes into account that the visitors that will come in.
And in a non-TOD community, that number would be?
It all depends. In no TODs, it could be 1.7 or 2. So you can see that it can drop significantly.
Okay.
It
So
can.
that's what I was trying to get at. That's significant.
It can be, and that's why I mentioned the Hamilton Lakes. Even though it's a non-TOD, because it's nowhere near, it's about 1.58, very close to what they're proposing. And that other development is nowhere near train station.
And the Hamilton Lakes, is that the new?
That's the newer one,
development?
correct.
Ones that went up, and that includes
Mhm.
the underground parking they have?
That's including their parking, correct. So it's 1.58 versus the 1.51 that they're proposing in here.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Kalifashevsky for the architecture portion, even though he has gone through some items already.
No more parking questions before we move on? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and now for the answer of the most sought-after question, EIFS. It stands for Exterior Insulating Finish System. It was actually developed by a Scandinavian country to deal with the problems of stucco being a Portland cement-based product, cracks in the cold weather. Stowe and Dryvit are the two main companies. There are other companies, but Stowe and Dryvit are really the industry leaders. We tend to lean more on Stowe because they are the ones that were manufactured in Scandinavia and really look at cold weather conditions. All the product in the Stowe product, which we are using, is called Stowe Lotus, and I'll explain that a little bit, is made of polymers that are not Portland cement based. So they can expand, they can contract. So with our hot summers, they can expand and not crack. In the cold winters, they can contract and not crack as well. One of the things that has been driving the change of building design is the energy code. The International Energy Code, which the state of Illinois adopts the latest version, each version gets about 30% more conservative in terms of energy usage and insulation requirements. As part of that is continuous insulation. That drives the insulation really to the outside of the building. And that's why EIFS is sought after. Some communities, quite frankly, consider EIFS a masonry material. And so in light of that, if that was in those communities, we would have 100% building of masonry. But so that's the EIFS. The Lotus part is when it rains on it, it actually is self-cleaning. So they've done a lot of chemical studies, and so actually as it rains, it's self-cleaning, and that's very good as well. In addition to that, there was mention, I forgot which gentleman mentioned it, about the possibility of trapped water behind. Quite frankly, that was more often in Florida in the very beginning stages of EIFS. It was not a Stowe product, wasn't a Drive-It product either, by the way. And quite frankly, it was just smacked onto the substrate. This has an actual drainage plane between the substrate and our EIFS system. So there's actually a drainage plane that allows, just like in a typical masonry building, where you have a cavity behind the face brick that allows any water that comes in to come out the bottom. That's what this system is too. And by the way, the masonry here proposed is not thin brick. We are using a full width of masonry. So we have that drainage plane in that area as well. This view here, is you can see, is going north on Wooddale Road, just about to swing into the main entryway. I just want to reiterate some of the items. Again, we are asking for some variances, so we know that we need to hold back on some things as well. So I just want to let you know the building coverage allowed by the code is 40%. We are only 25%. So we are 1.6 less. We could put technically another building, and just in terms of building coverage, on the site. So we're holding back from that standpoint. So we are, as you can see, we're 15% less than what's allowed there. The lot coverage is 80%, and we're below that amount as well. We mentioned just before that the buildings could be 72 feet high and 6 stories, and could have been contained in a couple of them, but the aesthetic appeal would not be. And quite frankly, for a commuter that wants to walk into more of a residential style neighborhood, we brought the buildings down. Part of the elements of the design here, as you can see, is that we purposely created changes in plane, both in a vertical sense of the vertical planes, our front and back, but also in the horizontal sense. We don't have this line of masonry going straight across, and we don't have the parapet going straight across. It goes up, it comes down, it comes back out and up, comes back down and back. It's a rhythm that's being developed, as you can see from the street side.
Mayor, we have a question. Mayor?
I'm sorry. I meant to ask earlier. The balconies, is that metal or
Yes.
Flexicor coming out or what?
No, there would be the metal balconies, correct,
Okay.
yes. All powder coated, Kynar finish, et cetera.
And I had a couple quick questions on the EIFS. Probably about 10 years ago, a friend of mine was looking at a home in Hinsdale and had the EIFS, and we did some research on it, and they had actually said that there's a lot of problems with the water getting behind. I mean, 10 years is a long time, so have they
Right.
done more with the technology on that? I know you said there's a drainage system behind
Yeah,
it.
absolutely, the drainage system, but also the polymers that are used in the product itself that allow the product to expand and contract more. so there isn't cracking, there isn't moisture getting back in there. And again, those systems, I'll bet you that they put that system directly on the substrate, no drainage plane whatsoever. And that's where we see the majority of the problems. And that's why we do PowerPoints and not any boards, because I'd be knocking them all over too.
And
So,
the other question I had on that, I know back then, I mean, when you looked at those homes, I mean, you could literally take a pen and poke a hole in the siding. Is that changed too?
yeah, well, we don't, the EFIS system, the Stowe Lotus, is a very hard system, but it expands. So yes, it's got the compaction. We're not bringing it down all the way to the ground. If we were, there's called armor mat that we would put in that gives it that extra strength, but we are keeping it up. But as part of also the towers at the corner, they're bounced out. The balconies give a horizontal element to it as well. And as you approach the building at the base, we're very sensitive of human scale. We actually are recessing the bricks in regular intervals just to break down that massing a little bit so you're not walking against a very large wall. So very sensitive to the progression of the...
We have one more question. Alderman Sorrentino.
Since we're on this material, is it going to be a flat, smooth finish, or is it going to have like a stone look to it?
It's going to be more, it's called a rilled pattern, but it has more, it's closer on the smooth side, but does have a little texture to it. So you get a little bit of the light play. As the light comes around, the colors of the wall change a little bit. I mean, not from a color to a color, but the tone of the color will change. So there'll be a little character with that, in addition to the character of the brick itself. And then we augmented the brick with the accents here, just defining some of the edges, just trying again to take a big wall and break it down into components as you see it from the street, as you drive into the facility, as you're walking along to your unit. These buildings are really four-sided. There's not a back per se. As we go through these, you'll see all of them have these elements involved in them. So with that, I'm hoping the point to make is that we are, again, 25% of 40%. As Todd says, we're dramatically reducing the runoff on the south, and we're reducing the runoff in the main points. So we're making the position better.
Alderman Messina.
Go ahead. I don't know what you call it, I guess you call it that black awning towards the top you talked about. It's,
Yes.
what's that construction? Is that like a powder, like a steel?
It is a steel, but it's all Kynar powder coated, so it will last forever. And it is a solid awning. It's not a bruxelles where you've seen those where they're like louvers that the rain could pour right through. They're actually solid and drained.
Is it like a steel roof above it, or is it?
Right. It's like similar to a canopy construction in a retail petroleum environment. So it's self-draining, and then we bring it down in the walls, and then we come out and tie to Todd's storm system.
And one other question with the, underneath the windows, the black portion, what is that? Is that?
That's also, we use it's aluminum composite material, and it's called ACM. Lucabond or Alcoa are manufacturers of that product, and it gives a very nice, clean finish. So we're trying to vary the textures, so not everything is rough. We have the smooth, we have the rough, and then the ephes is kind of right in the middle. So with that, we're going into the development now. We've turned the corner, we're looking west. You kind of get this really defined entry point. And again, all the buildings have that texture that we see in terms of the changing of the ephes. Even the panels here, these come out, those go in, etc. So you get that undulating effect. This is some of the pervious pavers, open and the larger area to that. As you can see, the trees are well screened. We really are trying to create kind of this neighborhood feel to it, wanting to walk through it. Obviously, the amenity directly to our west will be a huge selling point for this, as well as a train station to our south.
Do have a question here, Alderman Woods?
Yeah, I want to go back to the brick just to verify. So the brick is all full-size
It's a full width, 3 5/8 deep.
at all levels?
Every spot that
And
you
then
see the brick.
the intermediate or the transition points, whether you have a cove or some kind of finished stone to differentiate from the floor levels, is that a stone product, man-made product, cut stone? What is
Yeah,
that product?
it is not a limestone because that's soft, and this is the third time, I think it's my record. But it is a precast material. Something like Renaissance stone, that type of material.
And then the other question, could you speak to the heating and cooling? So are those through-the-wall units like a hotel motel?
They're in the units themselves will be through the wall units so that they have direct control of exactly, there's not a main system and some people like it warmer and colder and such. So each of the rooms will have their own PTAC type system, which is a through wall, which we're doing black vents to match the black balconies, to match the black ACM panel, and they're all louvered, so they're behind the louvers. So it's not this ugly, sore thumb sticking out there. It'll be behind the louvers, well designed. And then the hallway itself, the public areas, the hallways, stairwells and stuff like that, that will actually have a rooftop unit that's screened by the parapet, and that will be providing heating and cooling for the hallways, stairwells, the common room like the entryway and such.
Okay, so if I can, so with the PTAC units, aren't there some units that only have one outside wall? How do you effectively heat or cool that whole unit if that unit's 20 feet deep or?
Right, no, all the air flows are calculated into that unit. Also, with those, mostly with the one that are quite frankly just studios, and quite frankly, they're not bigger than a hotel room, and you know how the hotel does it as well. So it's very similar to that function, but we also put the exhaust fans to draw the air back. You know, both the restroom and the kitchen exhaust fan brings the air through. So we create that where it's delivered at the front wall and then brought through the whole unit.
Alderman Messina?
Yeah, so I'd like to make the motion. So I'd like to make the motion to accept the CDC approval on this matter and to recommend the approval of the concept plan as presented for the redevelopment of 372 Parkview Station, the former, quote, the former SPT property, with a 142-unit residential planned unit development as it's reflected here in the submitted concept plan.
Second.
Alderman Catalano?
Yeah, I like the concept, I like the design, and I like the fact that you guys didn't put the balconies on the first floor. That was one of our concerns when we first saw this project. And also, when the tenants, is there going to be restrictions what they can put on the balconies?
Quick answer, yes.
Okay,
100% yes.
thank you.
Roll call.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? Alderman Sorrentino?
Are there going to be streetlights throughout this development, or is it just the parking areas?
There's lights. There are lights throughout, on the buildings as well. So right at the main entrances, there'll be lights.
Before we do a roll call, Mr. Cage, the fire department and everything as far as the fire alarm systems and everything, they've already given their
Yes.
approval?
So, excellent point. Very quickly, the city consultant engineer has reviewed this, Christopher Burke Engineering, and the fire district has reviewed it. There were a couple of changes with the drive aisles and the permeable pavers to, the applicant did accommodate some of the comments from the fire district, and those were addressed satisfactory manner. Thank you.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, one quick question. We'll go to economics. Do we know what the rate, what the rent rate is for this per square foot?
Sure, we're in concept plan at this point, but we have targeted for the smaller units that are just over 500 square feet, about $800 a month. And then for the largest unit, it's a two-bedroom unit, over 1,000 square feet. That'd be somewhere right under $1,700 per month.
Thank you.
Okay, if no more questions, roll call, please.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
No, I'll wait to see the final.
Alderman Sizmarsky?
Yes.
Alderman Eugene Wesley?
No.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
That passes. Thank you all for coming in for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We look forward to moving forward.
Okay, next, moving on, items to be considered at future meetings. Facade Program Grant, March 26th. Special use, 345 East Irving Park Road, Unit 1W, March 26th. Airbnb code revisions, April 9th. We have any other? With that, I make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is officially adjourned.
All right, I'm going to call the Public Health, Safety, Judiciary, and Ethics Committee to order. Let the record reflect the same council members are present as were before. And I'd like an approval of the minutes of the meeting
Second.
of February 13th. Public Health. I'll make that motion. Mike seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Those are good. All right, at this time, I'm going to ask Chief Vesta to come up and discuss the intersection options at Potter and Spruce.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chief.
So we're here tonight to discuss the intersection of Potter and Spruce. I have some visual aids that'll kind of help us through the discussion and conditions that are over there. This initially came up in 2019. The resident that lives at that corner brought a request to the city to review whether a stop sign should be placed at that location. The residents are here tonight. We spoke with the city engineer, Robinson Engineering, and at that point, based on the accident data, they did not recommend a stop sign at that time. They recommended the installation of speed signs and arrows that Public Works implemented immediately. Those were in place. And, you know, this did start during the wintertime is when they initially had an incident. So based upon that, we also did additional enforcement. And I just went back and looked kind of at the enforcement data for 2018 and 2019. And in that stretch between Pine and Spruce on Potter, we wrote 99 citations over the 2-year period over there. Now, some of those could have been, if you had a DUI, you might have 3 or 4 citations of it, but most of them were just primary citations for speeding, seatbelt, distracted driving, stuff like that. So we did try to take additional enforcement measures over there based on the complaints, and we do sit in that area quite frequently. It's obviously a cut-through area for people usually going to 83 or coming off of 83, so it is a problem area. So just to review the traffic incidents, I had these photos in your memo, but so even the people at home can see. Since December of 18, there's been 4 separate incidents over there. You can see this is looking at their front yard. Vehicle would have come from the distance here and gone into their front yard in 2018. Then we had this one where the vehicle, I think their wheels were disabled after they hit the curb. And actually that's a picture of our officers out there handling that incident. And then this was the most serious one that happened at the end of January this year. This is looking down Potter Street on the left, you can see they actually slid through the intersection, went up through the front lawn, and then as you'll see in the next picture, this was the view of the vehicle that they struck in the driveway. So obviously, we're thankful it didn't go into the house and no one was in the driveway. But anyways, based on these escalating incidents, I had contact with the resident, and we had met in person, and we said we're going to look at this intersection again with the engineering company. The MUTCD, it actually says you should have 5 accidents within a 1-year period, but based on the fact that we've had 4 in a 14-month period, our additional citations, the cut-through traffic, we think there's enough to warrant the installation of a stop sign over there. So this is just the overhead view. This is the residence where the vehicles are coming off of this roadway and sliding into. And so we're looking where the current yield sign is to have a stop sign, council approve a stop sign there. So we did throw the idea of a guardrail to the engineer, and they said because you can't have enough crash-worthy sections on the end, it would not be authorized and would put liability on the city if we put a guardrail there. So we're recommending the installation of a stop sign. The engineer did say that the homeowner could add some more hardscapes in his front lawn east of that sidewalk, so that's going to be up to them if they choose to do additional. And then the other engineer suggested if the city wanted to, they could explore some other type of raised bed or something. So tonight, we're just looking for sure approval of the stop sign, and then direction if council wants to give that some time to see if that solves some of the issues, or do they want us to explore any further measures? So that's the basics of the situation.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the stop sign.
Second.
And then one question, or actually kind of a comment. Alderman Messina and I have talked to the resident over the years, and the chief has been kind enough to look into this. We have had the engineers look at this multiple times, and this incident could have been tragic if that vehicle would have ended up in their home. So,
Alderman Messina?
Yeah, so I won't parrot what Alderman Jacobs said, but I want to make note, I know you mentioned that time frame. Keep in mind, they've only been in the house 2 years, and that house was vacant. I remember, I think we tried pulling it on the MLS, but it was vacant for a year, so we don't even know how many times cars have ended up in this driveway in the grass without it being vacant. I will preface and say, while I am 100% and 120 million% for this, I really hope you guys consider some hardscape, because no matter what we do, it's a tricky curve, and I would not be shocked if it were to happen again, even with a stop sign. But I am 100% for it.
That's 120.
Yeah, 100 million, whatever. You got your.
Anything else? Alderman Wood? Sorry.
Chief, so in Mudco, could we put structural bollards or a decorative bell, something there as a deterrent to flying over the lawn, over the sidewalk, through the front yard, into the driveway, into the guy's car?
So
There's got to be something other than nothing. So I get the guardrail and the end safety pieces, but there's got to be something that we could do, I would think.
Go ahead, Chief.
So in addition to that recommendation that the homeowner could do it, what the engineer said is the city could assist the property owner with the construction of a raised landscape bed between the concrete sidewalk and the curb, created by the use of decorative landscaping blocks with the vegetation. The city would have to decide if participation would be appropriate, and then the future maintenance would have to be decided whether it was the city or the residents. So that was their recommendation, but it cannot be a permanent structure in the easement, because there's certain MUTC guidelines for if a car did go into it, as far as liability of flexibility of the system.
Alderman Sismarski, do you have a question?
No, Chief just pretty much answered that. We're liable if we put something there and help maintain it. The city would be liable if somebody dies in an accident hitting that
Chief.
hardscape
Well,
that we put in.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so the engineer, if we put in a hard structure that was not in compliance with MUTC guidelines, absolutely we would be liable.
Alderman Messina.
But if we were to do this raised landscape bed, would that limit our liability? That was one question I had.
Chief?
So we would have to contact the engineer, and they'd have to come up with some type of recommendation of something that would fit MUTC D guidelines.
Okay. Follow-up?
Yeah, so just keep in mind, guys, that that property directly across the street from them, so you think Gina's Hot Dogs, directly behind there is an empty plot of land with a lift station, and that park has been deeded to Bensonville Park District. If they ever get their act together and build the park they're supposed to, there will be kids there. So another reason to do whatever we can to really make that intersection safer.
At that time, it would be 4 weeks stop.
Mayor, do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I believe the residents have an option to put some type of stone or something like was done at the far west end, because basically identical as you come down Potter to Central. I know those residents, because they live right around the block from me, they ended up putting in a stone, which there's guidelines to that as well, correct, Chief? Right.
I'm not completely familiar with them, but I know it would have to be east of the sidewalk on their property, not on the easement. They can't put that on the easement.
And follow.
Follow-up?
So I talked to the chief about, so why don't we put the stop sign years ago over at Potter and Central? And basically the difference here is there's more traffic on that end because of the people cutting through to get to 83 and get off 83 to get to Irving. So there's more traffic.
Maybe Streetscape could look at something to do, maybe make some sort of variance and split something with the homeowners for safety reasons. Alderman Sismarski?
We're just like,
We're-
a trick bag.
We're here now.
Well, you said Bensonville got that corner, an empty lot? So there'll be a 4-way intersection then, if they're gonna put a park there.
If they ever will, it's been deeded to them, Bensonville Park District has given no indication they're gonna do anything with it at this point.
Are you talking up here, Alderman Messina?
I'm talking the other way, nope, down.
Down
Yeah.
here?
Yep, so there's a lift station where it says yield
Right,
sign, that's our
right.
lift station.
You're right, correct.
That area was deeded to Bensonville Park District,
Mom, can that be if we got a lift
from the
station?
developer. The idea was to put a park there.
Well, you know, all the stop signs and stop lights, there has to be some responsibility on the drivers because they could blow a stop sign, blow a stop light, and wind up in someone's living room. So something is going to have to be monitored, and maybe the first one that goes through, you could taser them, teach them a lesson, and have it on video. I like that, Mayor. All right, who else has something to say to that? Anybody? Mr. Bond?
Have something to say to that, they can't taser them from running through the.
Oh, no? Maybe not the first time, but the second time for sure. Alderman Sismarski, do you have a
Chief, you
comment?
Look into, I know it's not gonna stop them, but those plastic standing bollards through that turn, they would be visible that night?
They do have something that's there
so
right
they-
now. They're not as wide as the bollards.
Yeah, that, now I'm talking through
It's like the plow
along the
things.
double yellow line.
It's nothing.
Oh, and
Through to the ground.
curve. I don't know what the,
Yeah, like they have the runovers, I mean, they know they're,
so you're basically talking along here.
right.
Go ahead.
I don't know. I'd have to look into that.
Like the ones
I'd
that
have
have
to
the
talk
railroad
to the engineer.
crossing.
Alderman Messina.
Is it a little easier, so let's, because of liability, we talked about the landscape bed and that not maybe being an option, but is there a way, Alderman, Eugene Wesley mentioned maybe putting, or considering the use of like a ski bump potentially? Because inevitably, I know everyone thinks the stop sign's gonna work, and I really hope it does. But inevitably, when you're stopping, I mean, you're gonna slide going 30, 35 down Potter. You see it, you guys radar there all the time.
Yeah, and
Go ahead, Chief.
part of this is merely opinion, so not a traffic engineer, but I think because of the setback somewhat of where this location is, People see the yield and they think, all right, hey, I'm already kind of through it, I'll just kind of roll around the corner. And these incidents have been happening when there's been small amounts of snow on the ground, not 6 inches on the ground. It's just at that critical moment that if we give it a shot, let them try and stop, and maybe this is gonna solve the problems. I don't know if it will, but I think it's a reasonable step to take.
Alderman Messina.
Way to move it further up, so that this, if in fact they misjudge it and they stop, let's say, so it's before the, lift station maybe, the stop sign's before the lift station, so even if they misjudge it and they do kind of slide, they still have a little straight path before the curve.
Chief.
Again, you're gonna have to follow what, when Public Works installs, is a standard of how far from the intersection. You can't put it back so far, because then you're out of the guidelines too, so.
We talked about building up. Is there anything that they could do to dig down that won't have any effect on anything? So if someone does break through that area, instead of them flying up or going over, they're just bink, down they go. Bink. Something to consider. You could put flowers in there or whatever.
It's called a moat.
A moat. That's what I was thinking, a moat. With a big alligator. With a dinosaur. Alderman Woods.
We already have a dinosaur in our. How about, can we plant a couple trees over there? Obviously, brand new, they're not gonna stop a speeding car, but
Well,
years down the road.
Go ahead, Chief.
Maybe if I could offer this suggestion, why don't we decide on the stop sign, and if
Start
council
with
would,
that.
if council would like us to get additional recommendations from the engineer and cost estimates, we could do that and bring that back, maybe sometime in the late spring, since this is primarily a winter problem that we've been having. And then council can decide if they want to fund that.
I like that. Pursue that, Chief. The residents want to say something about this target practice they're having with your house? Come up to the microphone, please.
Thank you. I'm Sandra Logalvo, and this is Frank, my husband. I just want to say we are so grateful for our aldermen as well as the chief, who have been really supportive in dealing with this issue since we moved in 2 years ago. And I just want to say also thank you to everyone here, because you're throwing around really great ideas that we didn't even think of. And I just want to say that we are very interested in developing those ideas with you to come up with more things, whether it be some type of berm, some type of bed. I do believe that we have the gas line under our street, so I'm not really sure if planting trees or things underneath are going to actually work, but we're very interested in exploring those and willing to hear everything. So thank you, everyone.
Sorry for your troubles there.
You want to say anything?
First off, Sonny, I love your ideas. I can go with it.
Taser or the
I like that one the best.
gas
But in addition,
line, that's it.
But in addition to what my wife said, and one of the things that she wanted to point out originally is that there is a larger distance, there's a greater distance between ash and spruce, and that just invites people to speed. And I just wanted to throw that out there. Now, one of the things that my wife and I were looking at was that we did receive the past accident reports that have happened on this corner, and we noticed something interesting is that everybody who basically flies right through is from out of the city. They're not Wooddale residents. So one thing I'd like you to consider is that a stop sign at the very least will alert people that they shouldn't be speeding through that curve. Because obviously, we're all Wooddale residents, we know this area. We know not to go 60 around that curve and jump the V curve and head right towards my house. But out-of-state residents will be alerted that there is a danger coming up.
Good point.
So, but thank you again. We are very willing to work with all of you to develop some other ideas to prevent any further damage to our property.
Do you have
And thank
questions
you
for the
again.
residents?
No, just before that, it was a warehouse. It was a manufacturing building, and being a kid, I'm 50 now, so I'm not saying I hit his house back then. You probably. Everybody knew.
Come on.
I wasn't even there then. But everybody did speed through there when I was younger. That was all the oil, chemical, big foundation, and all Morgan's Gate and everything. But have you thought about boulders? Decorative?
We have, it's just that there, there's a lot of costs in whatever we decide, and then there's also getting authorization from whoever we need to do that. And I'm not really sure that, we've talked about costly options, and they just all seem very expensive to us. So we're really interested in trying the stop sign, getting other ideas, and seeing what solutions people come up with, yeah.
So can we just make a?
Alderman Messina.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Can we give direction to staff to work with the resident to come up with some ideas? I know we're gonna monitor the stop sign, but, inevitably, you're gonna be getting more calls from us, I'm sure, about this. I hope to God it stops it, but I would like to see if you guys could work maybe
Sure.
with streetscapes, and then maybe you guys can come back with some type of cost share with
Okay.
some ideas.
I think we should just hammer out the idea of getting the stop
Stop
sign
sign,
up
it's
there.
done. There's a motion, a
and then we'll
second,
go.
and then, yeah.
Let's
and
just
direction's
vote on the
done.
motion and the second to put up the stop sign. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Put it up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your patience. Okay. Items to be considered at future meetings. Gentlemen, anything? Well, then I'll make a motion to adjourn. Okay, that's a second, I guess. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We be adjourned.
I'd like to call the order of meeting. Minute taker, please take note, the same council members are present. And I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes
Second.
for February 13, 2020, Public Works Committee meeting. Any corrections? If there are none, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Next is report and recommendation approval for an intergovernmental agreement with School District 7 for the Ward 2 and 3 stormwater project. Director, if you want to touch on that briefly.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So the Ward 2-3 stormwater project will be breaking ground later this spring. As we all know, part of that project is the installation of some underground detention on property that is owned by School District 7. Through coordination with the school district, we've identified that we're going to place some stormwater detention pipes under their parking lot and under the undeveloped field in the rear. This will save us approximately $1 million over some other options that we explored for underground detention in the area. As part of that deal, they're going to be granting us some temporary construction easements along with a permanent dedication of right-of-way along Potter Street, and also a permanent easement for maintenance of the underground detention system in the future. In return, we have agreed to reconstruct their lots after construction and combine the two lots and completely resurface them.
Okay. Any questions? Go ahead, Alderman Wesley.
So, in agreement, we can replace all the parking lots over there, going away and.
Go ahead.
That, right?
Correct. The majority of the western lot is going to be torn up for the installation of the underground construction. We're going to put in a new lot connecting the east and west lots and then resurface the eastern lot.
So, what, follow, can I have it?
Yeah.
So the other question on this agreement, did they put the strictly dates when they have to be out of there?
Go ahead.
In the agreement?
The dates will be in the larger construction contract that gets awarded later this month. There's going to be liquidated damages if those benchmark dates aren't met for the contractor to be off school property.
And in that section, what is it, the total storage of water that detention's going to hold?
I believe it's designed to be upwards of 6 acre-feet, 6 to 7 acre-feet of storage.
And 2 million gallons?
Correct.
Okay. And as far as the start date, that's...
We're looking to break ground sometime after Memorial Day, immediately after Memorial Day.
Not this year, though?
For the Potter Street project,
For the Potter
correct.
Street, okay.
There will be the installation of a stub on school property, but it'll be mostly in the right-of-way off of Potter Street.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, you have a roll call, please? Oh, I made a motion, got a second, and roll call.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
He's out. Kissing behind.
Alderman Jacob?
He's getting his handshake. Are you voting?
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski?
Yes.
Alderman Eugene Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next is items to be considered at future meetings. North and South Plant Minor Repair Work, that's March 26. And Stormwater Project, Ward 2 and 3 bid, that's March also 26. And Elizabeth Drive Bridge, that's coming up in April. And engineering standards also coming up in April. And last is George Street, Itasca, intergovernmental agreement, that's coming up in spring. Any other items? Mayor?
Yeah, being that we're doing this project over there in Wards 2 and 3, that west end, I believe a year and a half ago, when we resurfaced one of the streets, came to our understanding, basically the pipes don't go all the way to Mill Road. It stops anywhere between 2 and 4 houses from the end. So I actually asked Mr. Lang to give me those maps, I want to see what's going on in that area. And there's many, many blocks that do not have access. So if people want to tap in, rear yard drainage, whatever, or if they got flooding in their backyards, they have no access unless they want to run a line 4 houses down or whatever. Then, if we're going to fix this area, I'm looking, I don't know, I just looked at it, maybe 200, 300 feet of pipe. We need to fix the area. So we need to look at that while Robinson's out there, because we're going to redo all those pipes on those streets, right? Most of them are 8 to 10 inches, some 12s. And we're upsizing everything to 18s to 24s and 30s, so we
Go
really need
ahead.
to fix that.
Yeah, correct. The majority of that work for the southern portion, which is what I think you're referring to, will be towards the eastern end near Prospect. But if this is something that the council wants to explore, we can certainly have Robinson look into extending those pipes westward as well.
Well, we need to have the discussion, because at some point, all those streets are gonna be done, whether it's from Mary Jane all the way to George. There's a lot of empty holes in there, and maybe that's the way it should be, and it works, but I've seen some cul-de-sacs. There's nothing in the cul-de-sac at all, and it has to come out of the cul-de-sac 2 houses away from the cul-de-sac. It's just,
Yeah, it's a future item.
we need to discuss.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, I think to the mayor's point, what he's talking about, so we're gonna, or at least we're trying to solve the problem with the stormwater over there, and a lot of the houses on the edge of that area don't even have the ability to evacuate the water because the storm sewer hasn't been extended down there. And even if they were willing to expend money to get the rear yard drainage program and run pipe, there's no pipe to run it to. So it kind of doesn't make sense to try to solve the problem, and there's probably 10% of the homes that won't reap any benefit because they don't drain to anything now. So if we could just at least look at that and see how we could parcel that into where that would best fit in the program. I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something we can explore not only with this stormwater project, but with any capital roads project that we do also.
Mayor?
Yeah, this goes right along with when we used to do roads, some little stubs used to get missed because we went from this end to that end. Well, that's off-centered, so we didn't do them, which is ridiculous. Now we do them, and this is the same thing going on here. Just because 50 years ago, some contractor decided to take a shortcut doesn't mean we're gonna do the same thing here. That's ridiculous.
Alderman Messina?
Is there anything else about the project, or? Guess good? Can I have other future items?
Yeah.
Okay. So one would be the daylight savings time, adjusting the clocks. That would be a nice future item. The other one, I know there was some discussion back and forth via email, but I do want to have a discussion about it. It's the clock tower water feature startup. If we could put that on as a future item. Now I want to have a discussion, making sure it is started and it is troubleshooted. I know there's strong belief that it's perfectly fine, but I don't want surprises.
Go ahead, Mr. Murmas.
I'm confused. I thought we had settled that earlier via email. I'm confused as to the council's role in this.
I just stopped replying because I was at work, so I didn't want to debate, but I would like to have a future discussion. I just want to make sure that there is no...
What's the intended council role? To tell
What's
us when to turn it on? What's the intended role?
The discussion hopefully could entail somebody looking at it sooner than later, to ensure that there is startup, that the Fountain Heights, I know, is a big debacle all over every single website in the city, or page, Facebook page.
Yeah, and we had
so-
fixed that already.
Well, then I hope so. If you guys can bring a maintenance report that shows that and that there is no flooding in the chambers, like all these issues we had that I know you guys say is fixed, that's fine. Just please, it could be a very short future item. Bring a report that says when we start it up, there will be no issues and the levels will be where they need to be. I'll be fine with that, but I'm done taking the heat from residents that are not happy with something as simple as the height of the fountains.
Mr. Murmas?
Sure, it's not really an agenda item, but I'll recirculate the information. If you remember it the last time when we talked about this at council to close it out, the startup of the fountains was purposely started up in trial phases, so that was purposefully. After it was initiated and started up off trial phase, the one and only problem was this motor that we're talking about, which we have ordered the part and have the part in hand. Unfortunately, we will not be able to install the part until it gets warmer, because if we do that in advance and start the fountains could break. So I could circulate that, but it's really not an agenda item. It's more of a informational item. There's no action need to be
I just
taken.
want an inspection. That's basically all I want. Every indication, if you're telling me that it's perfectly fine, that's great, but I sure hope you're right, because
Director?
there will be other future items if it does come and this is not up and running. If
I
you're
didn't
saying
say it was
that's all it
perfectly
is, it's
fine. I
fine.
said there was one problem. We bought the part. When we install it and turn it on, we'll figure
If
out
you're
if it's
saying that's
perfectly
the only
fine.
problem when we start it up and it's going to be fixed, fine.
If I could just interject,
Director,
here,
go
I
ahead.
completely understand your concern, Alderman. I share them with you, and I just want to assure the council that we have followed all manufacturers' guidelines for winterization, and we've removed parts that might be susceptible to damage during the winter or vandalism. So as now, we've done everything we can to prepare ourselves for startup. Unfortunately, we won't know any issues caused by winterization until we do start up. But as soon as the weather breaks, it has to be above, 40 degrees for a certain stretch. We will be out there testing the fountains to ensure that they're on in a reasonable amount of time. It's a top priority of mine this year, I assure you.
But we don't have a date yet, just when the weather.
When the weather breaks.
That's it.
I don't control the weather, so whenever that decides to break, we will be out there. As Manager Murmas alluded to, turning them on too soon could and probably would damage some parts.
Okay, any other items to consider? If there are none, then I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? No? So we're adjourned. Thank you.
I'd like to call the Finance and Administration Committee to order. Let the minute taker reflect all the same members are present. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from February 27th? Any questions, changes, comments? There being none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes. Next, report and recommendation, fiscal year 2021 audit contract. I can't wait. Take it away, Mr. Wilson.
I make the motion to approve. Second.
Roll call.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky?
Yes.
Alderman Eugene Wesley? Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
That passes. Next, items to be considered at future meetings, utility billing, printing, bid results, March 26th. Who has a question? Mr. Catalano.
Yes, I'd like to, items for future meeting, and I'd like Brad to look into the sewer discount. We have some residents out there that they don't use our water, but of course they're paying for the sewer and the garbage. And the seniors out there were, some of them, unfortunately, their bill went up, so they're looking for a discount for that. So I'll give you direction to look into that.
No,
Did we already?
I'll explain.
Want to address that?
So what he's talking about is we have we have certain residents, maybe about 300 or something like that to that number, sewer only. And they cannot get the discount, the senior discount. They get it for the garbage, but they can't get it, they have no water because they're on sewer only, so they have no other discount. Why can't, it was asked if they could also receive a discount.
Right.
Correct, Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, correct. So it'd be for the sewer-only residents that qualify for the senior discount. And really, the concept is that if you use the water and the sewer, you have the ability to kind of monitor your usage and use less if you need to kind of to manage your bill a little bit. With the sewer-only people, the sewer-only is a formula, and so when those new rates went into effect, they just automatically felt the full brunt of that and don't have any ability whatsoever to try to mitigate that at all. So the request is to try to mitigate that a little bit. We're not talking a huge number of residents in that band, so that's certainly, yeah, if the council wishes, we can certainly look into that.
Thank you.
Well, but isn't kind of the mitigation the fact that they could run 2,000 gallons or 15,000 gallons through that sewer, and where I would pay per gallon running through that sewer, they just pay a flat fee. Can you speak to that? And then we're gonna discount that. Okay.
Sure, it's not on the bill, on the agenda.
Mr. Wilson, comment.
I would just like to point out that the previously added public works item of changing the clock in the council chambers has already been resolved.
All right.
So we can take that one off.
All right, nice. So if there's nothing else that anybody would like to add, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.
Yeah, I do this for future.
All right. I know.